Hey everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of the Intentional Life Podcast. My name is AJ Selby, and this is my wife,
Amy Selby.
And this is the podcast where we talk about how adding one small layer of intentionality to your life can make the seemingly overwhelming aspects more manageable. And so here we are. We're back here in Mad Toy Box Studios here in Matthews, North Carolina. And this is our new home. I've actually started working with Chris, the owner of Mad Toy Box, doing some work for him, and he's become a buddy of mine. And we both like bourbon and cigars and stuff like that. And so he's just a real cool guy, and we love this space. It's a great space to use. And so this will be our home for those watching on video. This will be our home for a bit. And so, yeah. So we're here, and thanks for coming back. Make sure, I did want to mention before we get started, guys, if you listen regularly and this is a show that you enjoy and that you found beneficial, we'd really appreciate if you maybe if you gave us a review on whatever podcast platform you listen to, or share with a friend. The algorithms pick up shows that are being shared and things like that, and the more listeners that we can get, the better. It's not about the money. It's about the fact that we want to be able to try and be a resource and be a help to as many people as we can. And so make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. You can find us on social media at the Intentional Life Pod. We put out shorts there and little bites of these conversations all the time. And so give us a hand. Share an episode, like it, review it. We'd love the feedback. So, baby, what is our question today?
All right. Today, we have two questions that we kind of grouped together for today. So the first one is, what is the difference between lust and love? And our second question is, how to do slow burn relationships.
I can see how we would have grouped those together, because oftentimes something that is not a slow burn is really more of a fast and lustful, fiery sprint. When it comes to love and lust, really it comes down to what are the actions of those two things. And so love is going to have very different actions and very different
motivations.
Motivations and just how it shows up in your relationship than lust does. And it can be the feelings that go along with something motivated out of lust can be very deceiving compared to a relationship based in love. Because you've got so many endorphins and so much going on in the body, because it's thrilling. And love can have a lot of the same feelings, but it really comes down to what is the motivation behind the actions that are a part of that relationship.
Yeah, I agree. I think the first thing that comes to mind for me is, at least looking at this from a biblical standpoint, my mind immediately goes to 1 Corinthians 13, which I think we quote it so much that I think sometimes people like roll their eyes when you mention it, but it's a really powerful scripture. But it talks about love is patient. It's kind. It's not boastful. It's not proud. It's patient. It's all of these things. It's not rude. It's not self-seeking. And I think if we just flip that over, and what are the opposite words to all the things that describe what love is, I think we have lust. Lust is self-seeking. It's impatient. It is proud. It is boastful. It is rude. It is like all of these things. And like, I think that just goes to what you were saying. Like it's it's more geared towards self. But yeah, the attitudes are different. The attitude of the heart and the mindset is different with both of those. And I think oftentimes we think, oh, well, lust. Well, that's, looking at someone inappropriately. Well, yeah, that's part of it. But you can not ever do that and still have an attitude that's geared toward lust rather than actually love and care for another person. And I think that's important to point out because we can easily deceive ourselves and be like, well, I'm not thinking impure thoughts about this person. And it's like, well, that doesn't matter. Are you only looking at, that does matter, but it's not the only facet. It's how are you looking at, what's the lens you're looking at this person through or at any person through? Is it, what can they give me? What can I take? Or is it from that like love and care perspective? Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think within Christian circles, it can be really easy to over spiritualize it with the term lust, where lust can very easily be swapped out for selfish. Like, is this a selfish relationship or is this a loving relationship? Because, it is possible to have selfish actions within a loving relationship because we're all human. There are times where there are plenty of times where I'm like, man, I'm being kind of selfish right now in whatever the situation is, whether it's, where I want to go to eat or, a certain way that I wanted something done. Because we all deal with those kinds of things. But if the actions of how you're approaching a relationship are rooted in the selfishness of what you can gain or how it makes you feel, if you're in a relationship where you look at it and you evaluate that if this person could not give me anything else for the rest of our life, would I still want to be in it? And the answer is no, because all you want is something out of that person, then that's a very selfish and lustful relationship.
Yeah.
And that can be anything. That can be from, sexual. That can be from, financial. That can be from emotional. That can be from physical, like, support in all of those areas. If you're looking for something from somebody and that's all you're wanting from that person, they're filling a need.
Yeah.
Whereas loving it's a very selfless action. Regardless of what this individual is doing, you're making the choice to show them compassion and forgiveness and patience and
Right.
Throughout the rest of your life.
Right.
And so I think that's the biggest difference between a loving relationship and a lustful or selfish relationship.
Yeah. And I think I don't know if anybody's mind is going to go here, but it popped in my head, so I'm going to mention it. When we say selfless, we're not talking about doormat. Like, just because you are like loving and serving that person from that place, hopefully their heart and their mindset is the same, but we're not talking about being a doormat for somebody. So I'm just clarifying what we mean by that. But
yeah, to continue your point, yeah, being selfless does not mean that you're just trampled on all the time and you bend to the will of
the
your
opposite of
of the person
love,
that you're in a relationship with.
Yeah.
It simply means just thinking of yourself less. Humility isn't thinking of others more. It's simply thinking of yourself less. And that's what selflessness and humility looks like in a relationship. When you are making a conscious effort to think about the needs of others before your own, then that's what then can create a foundation for a really solid relationship and a relationship based in love versus one that is based in what am I getting out of this? How am I being fulfilled in this
Mhm.
relationship? So,
Yeah. And I think something interesting to point out is I think it can be easy to think about being in a relationship in that way and be like, well, if I'm always just being selfless and putting this person first and not thinking about myself first, then my needs are never going to get met. And I mean, in all the realms, like not just physically, but emotionally or financially or whatever, all the things. And it's like, no, but if you both have the mindset of serving each other and really loving each other well and putting the other person first and caring about what their thoughts and their emotions are right now, and then yeah, your needs are going to get met. Those emotional needs, those all of the things are going to get met when both of you are coming at it from the same heart posture, the same place. Um, and that's the really beautiful thing about the way that I think God really designed us to love one another. And that's, I mean, not just romantic relationships either, although, obviously that's um, a relationship to talk about this in. And that is what this person's specifically talking about is romantic relationships, dating and marriage and otherwise. But even in just our family, our friends, coworkers, any kind of relationship that we have, it still applies. It's not just romantic. But that's more what we're focusing on in this episode, obviously. But um, yeah, when you both come at it with that same heart posture, you meet each other's needs. Like you meet each other where you're at, and you're able to think about the other person with compassion and care and genuine interest, like you were just talking about. Um, yeah. Which, I mean, is way more fulfilling and interesting than when it's just like all about what I can get out of it, you know? That gets boring really fast.
no, that's true. And so I want to transition into the second kind of question.
Mm-hmm.
And we look at, what's a slow burn relationship. I know I kind of mentioned at the beginning of the conversation that anything that is not, necessarily a slow burn, if it's, fast and fiery, it's often based in lust. And sometimes it may not even be an intentional lust. It's you're in the midst, you're in the throes of somebody fulfilling needs in your life that maybe you consciously know they're filling or unconsciously know that they're filling, of whether it's attention or feeling significance or being seen. And that doesn't mean that, um, that relationships can't move quickly, but it does mean that you need to be very conscious of what are the motivations and why this relationship is moving as quickly as it
Yeah.
is. Because I've had, we've talked about before where I'm the only guy you've ever dated,
Mm-hmm.
only guy you've ever kissed, and we've, you know, only guy you've slept with, and we got married. And I'm on a very different side of this coin of I had lived a very promiscuous life. And so I've had many things that were very lustful and very fiery and flamed out epically. Like d- grandstand, Olympic scoring 10 out of 10 going down in flames because of the foolishness of lust that I was caught up in.
Mm.
And, in hindsight is always 2020. I can look back and see how and where in those different relationships there was so much selfish motivation in it for me of what I was getting out of those relationships, and I think oftentimes that it was even both sides, where we were both
Mm.
just using each other for whatever the needs felt that, we were needing to have fulfilled in our lives because of whatever what it was that was going on. And so there is that aspect of it, but I wanna look at a really practical level of what it looks like to be intentional about how quickly you're moving a relationship along in order to avoid things flaming out hardcore and making sure that you're approaching it with the intent of, "I wanna make sure that this relationship is a slow burn and that this is something that's gonna be meaningful and lasts."
Mm.
And so, I've heard Tim Ross talk about his relationship with his wife when they first started dating. When they first started dating, he had asked her out, and I may not get this 100% right, but this is something along the lines of he had expressed his interest in her, and then she didn't say yes, but she didn't say no, and they use the analogy of that it was a yellow light. It
Mm.
it was a proceed with caution,
I like that analogy.
where we're gonna take things slowly, one step at a time as things unfold.
Mhm.
And where that comes into how you and I walked out our relationship and how I've seen other successful relationships walked out
Mhm.
is where you're just very intentional about the level of intimacy that you choose to go to. And we've talked before about how intimacy isn't just sex. And actually, that might not have been on this podcast.
Well, that might have been on a different.
I think I had that as a conversation when I hosted not the intentional life. That's this
That's
podcast.
this one.
When I hosted the Life is Relationships podcast
Yeah.
for the Inn, and so that was an intimacy isn't just sex episode uh, over on their podcast. But um, yeah, intimacy isn't just sex.
Right.
You and I have had this conversation with many people, um,
Mm.
guys and gals, where intimacy is far more about there is the total physical aspect of no physical action to making the choice to sleep with somebody, and the intimacy that comes with that. There is a closeness that comes with that, and there's a
Mm.
beauty to be had in those physical actions only taking place with the person that you are choosing to spend your life with. Um, and there's even scientific stuff to back that up. So, I mean, there's our biblical perspective that
Yeah.
says this is good, but scientifically, there's information that backs up when you are choosing to, uh, when you are sleeping with somebody, that the endorphins that are released in your body are essentially there's an aspect of a linking that's happening with this individual, and when you're doing that over and over and over again, it actually ends up confusing the body to where
You mean over and over again with different people?
yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, when you're doing this over and over and over again with different people, it's actually confusing the body and confusing the hormones within your
Mm.
body, um, where essentially because they're having to reset constantly,
Mm.
and then but I won't go full down the scientific trail, but just
Yeah.
saying that there's actually there is a proven, like, negative side effect to living promiscuously,
Mm.
and the effect that it has on your body. Um, but outside of the physical intimacy, I think that we live in a culture today that everybody wants so desperately to be seen and known, um, for who they are and all that they are. And what that results in is actually exposing more of ourselves than is necessary
Mm.
before it's with the right person in the right time. Where an example might be, even within the first few dates of somebody getting together and they're talking about all of their past traumas and all of the things that they've walked through in life. I think the desire there is that people want to make sure that the other person knows what they're getting into and or it's just an act of confession of this is everything I've done in life, take it or leave it. Where when you constantly give out pieces of yourself like that, now you're if something doesn't if that relationship goes sideways, now essentially you've just weaponized the relationship because now that person, depending on their integrity,
Right.
can choose to use that against you at any point in time, which that's not love. And if it's a lustful relationship, then they're probably going to go and talk trash
Mm.
about you and about what they know about you when things end.
Mm.
And so discretion is actually a really beautiful thing
Mm.
within relationships. Uh, I think people can have a tendency to link deceit and discretion because they think they are being deceitful by not being forthcoming with information
Mm.
that they think would be valuable to a relationship, which they may not be wrong in that information may be valuable to that relationship if it is going to be a long-term lasting relationship. But the discretion is when that information is not necessary at this phase of the relationship.
Right.
If you're within the first 6 months of dating, this person probably doesn't need to know about some of the intense trauma things that you've walked through in life.
Mm.
Because unless you know that you know that you know that you're gonna get married, there are things this person doesn't need to know about you at all.
Mhm.
There are things and, like, I don't remember if we've talked about it here or if the just different we've talked about it in multiple different areas, but there are things that we did not know about each other until we got engaged.
Mhm.
And we knew that up front. We knew that there were things from our lives that we were not sharing with each other. And it wasn't a questioning thing or like we were holding out. It was because we were making the choice of this isn't for this person to know or carry until we are in it for the long haul. So it's not like we held out until after we got married and then we were like, "Hey, by the way, I've been through this, this, and this in my life." It's like, "Whoa." And that's what I think people feel like they need to share in the dating phase.
Mhm.
Whereas, no, once you start getting serious in conversations about marriage and when there's engagement, I feel like engagement is this is engagement is like the last launching point of being able to share information and say, "These are the things I've been through in life that if this is gonna have a negative impact on this relationship, that here's your final out."
Yeah.
You're not married yet.
Yeah.
Does it suck to break off an engagement? Absolutely. Like, I can't imagine what it's like to break off an engagement, but I would much rather break off an engagement than either get married and split because of unresolved issues and things that haven't been worked through, or have this person know a bunch of information about me that's not relevant to their life before we're even at the point of being married. And so discretion is a really useful tool and is actually a gift to relationships and actually sustaining the longevity of relationships when you use discretion to share information at certain points along the way where it's actually relevant to the relationship versus just throwing all your cards out on the table just for the sake of transparency. It doesn't serve a good purpose when you just throw information out there. So,
Yeah. Discretion, before you used the word discretion, that was what was popping in my head when you're talking about intimacy is more than just physical. And I mean, discretion and wisdom go hand in hand. It is wise to have healthy discretion in decisions that you make, in how you share aspects of your life, everything that you were just saying, with not just someone that you want to be in a romantic relationship with, but just people in general. Because and I think you mentioned this briefly at one point, but it's like it's not just about guarding yourself in a healthy way, which that is part of it, but it's also like, why do you feel the need to throw that on someone else before they're ready or before the time is necessary for that? Like you were mentioning. Yeah, I don't know that it's very kind to just throw stuff at people. I've literally, I mean, I've known people who have, I had met like once or twice, and they just dumped all their stuff. And, and these were friendships. Like you said, you're the only guy I've dated, so it wasn't romantic relationships, but people who just dumped stuff, and maybe they just felt comfortable with me, or maybe, I mean, I don't know what their reasons were. Maybe, like you said, they just wanted to be seen and heard. And while I understand that, at the same time, it's like, I don't know you. I've met you once or twice. I don't actually know you. And I was just trying to say, hey, how's your day going? Like, I'm not actually trying to like get into all your past trauma and all of the hard, deep things that have gone on in your life. And I've literally had people just throw that at me in like the first one or two times I've met them. And I'm like, that is, first of all, I don't want to carry that. Like, I mean, it's my choice if I carry it or not. Obviously, I can put that aside and be like, that's not mine. That's not my stuff. It doesn't have to stick. And also, like, why are you, it's like dumping a bucket of goo on somebody. And it's like, why did you just do that to me? I don't know you well enough to help you work through this, or to like, I just feel bombarded. I feel like stuff's just being, I'm just trying to get to know you. And like, what's your favorite color? Like, can we start there? Oh my goodness. I think maybe it is just a desperation to be seen and heard and all of that. Or like you said, maybe, some people they genuinely just don't want to be misunderstood, or they don't want to feel like they're holding out on people in terms of honesty. But you can be honest and guard your heart in a right way. You don't have to tell and show everything in order to be honest. But I think it's wisdom to walk in discretion, and to also, because I think it's wise to understand who you can trust with those heavy things. And, I think everyone does have those things that are hard or heavy that they've walked through. And that varies from person to person, in terms of like what that means or how heavy that really is. But it's wisdom to learn first, can I trust this person with that information? Not everyone is your therapist. You're not in a romantic relationship with everyone. Like, if you're trying to build a friendship with somebody, that's probably not the way to do it. It's just to throw all your stuff. I mean, I had another person who also would like just throw their junk. And like the first one or two times that they would meet somebody, I mean, like every person that they met, whether it was a romantic interest or just a friend, or they wanted a mentor, or what, like everyone. And they'd talk to me and they'd be like, I don't understand. Like, it just seems like nobody ever, sticks around too long in my life. And And in my mind, I'm like, girl, it's because you dump all of your crap on them right away. They're not prepared for that. They don't hardly know you. They don't even know your last name yet. And you're telling them all of this. So it's wisdom to go a little slower at the beginning, and also to really get to know people in a way that's, can they carry this? Not that wasn't the right way to say that. Not can they carry this, because nobody should have to carry that for you. But can I trust them with this information, with this part of myself, with this part of my past, with this struggle, with this whatever the fill in the blank is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, what's your motivation for why you're telling somebody that information about you? Because that is intimacy. The more you share about what's in you and what you've walked through, that's deeper parts of yourself that are intimate, that not everyone, most people don't need to know those things. Very few people need to know the really deep, intimate places of each of us. And especially when that comes to romantic relationships. Because also, like, let's say when it comes to romantic relationships, if you've dated several people and you've thrown all the deepest things of yourself at them, emotionally and or physically or whatever, and those relationships don't pan out, or vice versa, they've done that to you or both, you have all this knowledge and information about the deepest parts of that person, and they have all of that knowledge about you, that if you split ways, they didn't need any of that information going forward. It's not beneficial. And I don't mean like you look at every relationship from the viewpoint of, well, from a cynical, like, this doesn't work out, then blah, blah, blah. And you don't know if it's going to work out.
Mm-hmm.
So it's wisdom, discretion, all of those things go hand in hand. And yeah, I agree with what you were saying about, there's different stages, like friendship and then dating and then engagement and marriage. And yeah, there were things that we told each other up front, hey, like for you, for instance, I knew you'd walked through a lot. As friends, I knew you had walked through a lot. I wasn't digging into your life to figure out what those things were. I knew you'd been divorced and you'd walked through a really rough several years. And I knew you'd been in the military. You've worked in a trauma hospital, and you'd seen a lot that was really difficult to process and things like that. Like, I knew really basic general things that gave me an idea of, oh yeah, this guy's been through a lot. And I knew you were turning your life around at this point. So as a friend, there were a lot of things that I understood, but I didn't know all the details of. And I didn't need to know the details. And then we started dating. And you shared a little bit more, like, as we, continued to date and stuff. And you'd share a little bit more. And there were things that you'd say, hey, by the way, this topic, unless we get, more serious or, engaged or married, I'm not going to go into more details about this topic. And obviously I was the same way with you, but I just am referencing you because you went through a lot heavier things than I ever did. And I had to make the decision that I was content letting you hold that information from me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wasn't going to get offended. And then I wasn't going to get my feelings hurt and think that there was something shifty about you. No, I knew you'd walk through really heavy things. And it wasn't mine we weren't in a place to share that yet. it wasn't my business. I think sometimes we think it's automatically our business to know the other person's information and all of their things because we're in a relationship. It's like, no. You're not married to this person. You haven't reached the point that you've agreed to marry this person.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have a right to any information in their life that they don't want you to know yet at this point. And there is something to be said for saying, like, there are things that I'm not sharing yet, and that's intentional. We'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, when we got engaged, we both shared things with each other that we'd struggled through, we'd wrestled through, we'd walked through, whatever, as like, if this is a deal breaker for you. And thankfully, we were able to work through those things. And we got to a place that was like, no, like, we're not walking in those things anymore. And we can get married and this is okay. And I will even say, because some people will probably be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe that he did that. But there were things that you did not share with me until we got married. And you told me up front, there are things I haven't talked to anyone about. I haven't processed through them myself. I haven't let myself deal with them. And they're really painful. They're really deep. And I don't want to put that on you. Like me, you didn't want to put that on me.
Right.
And you're like, I need to work through that with a therapist, a counselor, before I bring that to you, because I want to make sure I'm coming from a place of healing in this and not just dumping it on you from a broken place. And I was like, okay, like, if that's what you need to do, that's okay. And I think that's really important to point out, because we were married and there were still things I didn't know about you that you had walked through. And it was okay, because you weren't just hiding away and like being this secretive person. Like, no, you were very open. You have always told me, you can ask me any question. I may not answer you, but you're allowed to ask me any question. That's what you've always told me. And same with me.
And to clarify that real quick, because you just said, you can ask me, I may not answer. It's not because I'm withholding information.
Right.
There have been, I'll be upfront and say, there are things that you still don't know the details of.
Right.
But that is because you have chosen to not ask.
Mm-hmm.
And I've talked about this. I've talked about this with some other people before, where the example that I give is that once I started going to therapy and processing some things and really working through healing and dealing with some stuff from my past, is that I have then come to you and presented very broad general information.
Yeah.
Of, hey, I've been working through this with my therapist. And if you want to talk about it, we can.
Mm-hmm.
If not, that's fine.
Yeah.
There are times that you ask me some more questions and I'll share some information and I'll say, there is stuff that's more. Do you want to know more? And you'll tell me no.
Yeah, that's true.
And there are times that I'll present a topic or something and you say, that's all I need to know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'll ask questions if I have more later. And so I give the example of, it's a book on the shelf. There are all these little books on the shelf that you can pull down and open up at any point in time. I may have a piece in the forward of that book that says, reader discretion advised.
Yeah.
Do you want to proceed? And you'll either proceed or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's not that I'm withholding information because I want to hold it from you and I want to keep you in the dark. It's that we as humans are only, we can only carry so much trauma in our lives. And there are times that it doesn't serve a purpose for us to carry someone else's trauma. you can know it exists and that it happened without knowing the details.
Right. The nitty-gritty. Yeah.
And so even now, 5.5 years, almost 6 years into marriage, there are things that Amy knows
Generally.
generally
Yeah.
that have happened in my life. She knows that book is sitting on the shelf and she can choose to take that book down at any point in time if she wants.
Yeah.
But she doesn't, but I'm not sitting there throwing up a PowerPoint of here's all my childhood trauma about this, this, and this.
Yeah.
And just throwing
Or
stuff
your
at her.
military trauma or your
Yeah, or
whatever.
any of those things. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
There's all
I
of
like
that
that
stuff.
analogy, babe. You've used that. We've talked through that analogy before, but I
Yeah.
completely forgot about it, and I really like that analogy.
Yeah. It can be, I think that it can be helpful to other people to know I can show them the library without forcing the book into their face.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. I really do love that analogy. And also I'm a book nerd, so I mean that speaks my language anyway. But yeah, I love that. And even the library analogy, because or at least with like fancy libraries, I don't know, there's restricted sections sometimes. And it's like giving somebody a library card to come into your library. There are places that they can access. Yeah. There's the friend zone. There's the, whatever. And there's like the intimate circle of friends or the person you're in a relationship with, you're married to. There's like the restricted section that's for the person you're married to, your therapist, your whatever, your pastor, the person you're like walking through heavy things with, that not everybody's library card gives them access there.
Yeah. It's like the Library of Congress.
Mm-hmm.
The general public can go to certain sections. Other people with special press privileges get access to other sections. There's some people that are the experts that only get access to the archives. But your depth, like your level, gives you access to different areas.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But before I carry on, I want to talk about different levels of intimacy here in just a second. And I know we're probably running long, but I think this is a good conversation.
Ooh, yeah, we are.
But I want to move this along. I did want to call out one thing real quick. I was reminded when you were talking about just when we were talking about, different levels of struggles and things like that, there was something that I wanted to call out and that I wanted to bring up. There was a gentleman that I know who had a young man that wanted to date his daughter. And obviously, as a good Christian father, he wanted to sit down and have a conversation with this guy and just know more about his life. And as a part of that conversation, it came up that this young man had either been previously or was struggling with pornography. And at that point, that's where, as a Christian dad, it is a good thing to then, if the young man is willing and wanting to, if the young man wants to receive help in how to walk that out and be free of that, that you come in as a mentor, as a father to this young man and walk through things with him privately. But what this dad did is he said, well, if you're going to date my daughter, you have to come clean to her and let her make the choice if she's going to be in a relationship with you. And so in front of the dad, he made this young man tell his daughter that he had been struggling with pornography. Which, I mean, imagine the trauma that in and of itself creates for the young man and for the daughter. It's like that's not something that young woman needs to know about that guy. Because she doesn't need to carry that. She doesn't need to have that perspective of that young man. And then also for that young guy is that he chose to be vulnerable with a mentor. And that mentor took his struggle and weaponized it as an exposure.
Mm.
So what out of that scenario would make that father think that that strengthens his relationship with that young man, or that communicates to that young man, hey, when you're struggling in life, you can go to some people that's safe and share what you're struggling with.
Yeah.
That completely destroyed that relationship.
Mm.
That dating relationship did not progress any further, obviously.
Yeah, that's
Because
awkward.
because then, of course, in front of the father, the woman had to make the choice.
If she was gonna.
The father made her choose in front of him. Are you going to choose to date this guy that has admitted to struggling with pornography or not? And so that
Talking
whole
about being
thing
between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, that whole thing.
That's uncomfortable.
I mean, you want to talk about just blowing up a scenario, blowing up a relationship, blowing up someone's their own walk with the Lord in faith because they had looked to you as a mentor and now you just expose them. Like it was devastating. I was furious.
And the fact that that young man was honest enough to share that information. He didn't have to
he could have chosen to lie.
He could have withheld it, yeah.
He chose to be honest, and rather than walking this guy through it,
that makes me sad.
The father weaponized it to keep this guy from being in a relationship with his daughter. And so Christian dads, do better. Come on. If you have a daughter that, and you're talking to a young guy and they're struggling with stuff, there's no need to give it to throw it out there to your daughter.
Yeah.
Walk with the guy.
Yeah.
Be a father to a fatherless generation and walk them through things.
I mean, I think it would have been okay or appropriate for that dad to say, hey, thanks for being honest with me. I really appreciate that. Yeah, let's walk through. Do you want to be free of this? Like, do you want to not struggle with this? While you are struggling with this, I would appreciate it if you didn't date my daughter yet.
Yeah, completely fair.
If you want to be friends with her or whatever, but I would appreciate if you didn't enter into a relationship with her yet.
Yeah.
Until you're on the other side of this, until you've gained freedom in this area. You have accountability in this area and all of that. I think that'd be appropriate.
Yeah.
That's okay. But yeah, that doesn't sound like a very healthy way to handle that situation. And that breaks my heart for all of them involved. And I'm sure that girl's relationship with her dad was even completely thrown off. And it would make it hard to want to share anything with your dad if that's how he, was going to respond and how he was going to treat difficulties and insecurities and struggles. Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah. Christian dads, don't be toxic. Don't be a toxic Christian.
Yeah.
So I want to, aside from that, back to the intimacy and stuff like that, so we can try and wrap this up. I realize we've been here for a while. That at the ministry that Amy and I used to work at the inn, the director there still is a program called Train to Reign where it's a marriage and parenting conference where the first week is all about marriage and a strong foundation of marriage. And the second week is a strong foundation of parenting and, how to disciple children and all that stuff. And so as a part of that, in the marriage week, there was a conversation that would be had that he would teach about that had to do with levels of communication. And he used this analogy of a house. And I'm going to kind of paraphrase and I'm going to go through it kind of quickly. Amy, fill in any gaps that I may be missing. And so when it comes to different levels of communication, we're talking about being very intentional about different phases, about how much you're sharing about what. And so he would share about how, when there are 5 different places, there's the front door, there's the living room, there's the kitchen, there's the bedroom, and there's the penthouse. Those are the 5. So the front door, that's, And it's the front door. It's where general greeting happens.
Yeah.
It's where some people, you allow some people into the home and where you don't let others into the home. And
Right.
that's where just general passing, that's your acquaintances. Well, I mean, may not even be acquaintances. It may be acquaintances of acquaintances at that point.
Yeah.
The living room, that's like the formal living room. That's kind of where that's where the door-to-door salesman may come into your home and sit and give their pitch. And where you talk about generalities of life, or where if you have, a contractor come over to your house, they may look at the work that needs to be done, and then you end up in the living room and you're kind of talking business, right? The third place is the kitchen. That's where life is lived. That's where bread is broken. That's where there's more strengthening of those relationships. And that's where a lot more life is shared. There's still not super deep, intimate things.
You're starting to share your opinions and your thoughts and yeah.
And so where there's a little more trust, where there's a little more vulnerability, and so that's where more relationships are strengthened through that. Then there's the bedroom. That's where things, where there's more intimate things shared.
Deeper conversations.
Yes, deeper conversations, more life experiences are shared. And the bedroom doesn't indicate that it's just physical, but that may be where some physical starts to happen. And then there's the penthouse, where the penthouse is where, just like in a penthouse, in any hotel or high rise, there's an exclusivity to the penthouse.
Yeah.
That's where the most inner circle has the deepest knowledge of your life, your experiences, your opinions, your traumas, things like that.
Yeah.
And so, and you don't just go in the way that this would be communicated and talked about in this setting at the ministry was, you don't just go from the front door to the penthouse.
Yeah, and skip everything in between.
Right. And because when that happens, there's a total breakdown of communication, of trust, of true intimacy. If you're running someone from the front door to the penthouse, it's based in lust. It's not, it's only going to be for the flash and show of, look at this, give me what I want.
Yeah.
Versus there is a nurturing that happens in the conversations that are had through each phase of that relationship. The conversations that happen at the front door are different than the living room, are different than the kitchen, are different than the bedroom, and are different than the penthouse. There's a massive time difference between the front door and the penthouse. And for us, we went from, we were friends for about 6 months, and then we got engaged.
Or dated.
That's true. Sorry, I skipped a step. We were friends for about 6 months. Then we started dating, and we dated for about
8 or 9
months. Then we got engaged, and we were engaged for about
3 to 4 months.
4 months. We dated for 8 months, engaged for 4 months, because we were married a year to the day from when we started dating. And so, yeah, some people may look at that and say, man, that's not a slow burn. That went fast. The thing that I always remind people of is that we lived and worked together on the same property. We saw each other every single day. We ran the math at one point, and if we took the average amount of hours of people that are dating, of how much time they got face to face while dating, our 8-month dating period ended up being like 3 years of somebody else dating, because we saw each other face to face, working every single day, seeing
We were in the
people in
same
relationships.
office.
Yeah, we worked in the same office. We saw how people dealt when things didn't go right, when things did go right, when they didn't agree with what, authority or leadership was saying. and how that was walked out.
High stress situations.
Yeah. And there were periods of time where it was like, running on, I'm running on 2 hours of sleep, or, a night for, 4 nights straight because of all the work that was needing to be done. It wasn't overworked. I more put it on myself because I'd tell people that I had it and I didn't have it, but that's just me.
Yeah.
I'm trying to watch out for the team, not overwork them. And it just, anyways, separate thing where it's like, we see each other in high stress scenarios and see and understand how each other does stuff. So all that to say, our 8 months of dating really multiplied to like 3 years of dating. So we were just in
we had a lot of face-to-face
we were just
time.
like, we were like in an Instapot situation where we just got to see things unfold and be exposed a lot faster than things do in a typical dating relationship.
And in that, we were still very intentional.
Yes.
We weren't just flying by the seat of our pants, whatever felt good. And we had accountability in that space, and we had intentionality in that space.
Actually, it's good that you mentioned that, because part of that whole thing is that because we worked and lived on the same property and we worked in a ministry,
right,
where we were leading college students and high school students regularly throughout the year.
There was a standard.
There was a standard.
Yeah.
And we made sure that we walked in accountability to, the leadership of that ministry, where we met with them one-on-one and as a couple sometimes, but primarily one-on-one, just to check in and make sure that things were good.
Right.
As we went along.
Yeah. Not even like every week, but just occasionally. Yeah. Because thankfully, they were not like, overbearing or anything. They were like, y'all are adults. We trust you. We trust that you know the heart and the standard of this place. If something happens, come talk to us. But otherwise, like, we'll check in here and there, just see how you're doing, whatever. And so I appreciated that there was that accountability, but it wasn't overbearing. But we had that. And I think it's probably important for any relationship, whether that's parents or mentor or close friend or whatever, that can, help you see straight, because all those hormones and things are going in, so you can't see straight sometimes. So having those people in your corner it's really important. Yeah.
And so, babe, we've rambled on for a long time on this particular topic. I want to make sure that people listening or watching on YouTube, when it comes to, when we're talking about relationships, when we're talking about intimacy, when we're talking about slow burn relationships, lust and love, some very intentional things to take away from this conversation would be making sure that your motivations in your relationship are based out of a place of selflessness and not selfishness. Be very intentional about the depth of how intimate you are at different phases of your relationship. Don't run from the front door to the penthouse or even the bedroom.
Right.
Too quickly. Use discretion and wisdom to make sure that that you're walking at a good speed with this person, and that you're in lockstep together on where you are at the phase of your relationship and the seriousness and where you are in life. And it doesn't have to be a dating or your relationship like that. The intimacy of information can be, translated to even just friendships, like Amy mentioned with her, the gal that she was talking about that would just throw out all the crazy information within the first couple times of meeting somebody and wonder why people didn't stick around.
Yeah.
And then, I guess those are the two main things, right there.
Yeah.
Make sure approaching things from a place of selflessness, not selfishness, and that'll help differentiate between lust and love. Comparing love to 1 Corinthians. If the actions represented in the relationship are opposite of that, it's probably lustful and not from a place of love. And then just watch the levels of your intimacy of information and make sure, whether it's a dating relationship or a friendship, that you're not moving too quickly from the front door to the penthouse and that you're using wisdom and discretion along the way.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah. You want to draw a card?
sure. So this is actually a new set of cards, and actually, I may just pitch them. If there's anyone that has a card deck that's like these conversation starter cards that wants to be a show sponsor, let us know. We're currently just using a bunch of cards that we've enjoyed, that we've used, but we would actually, if there's someone that has a connection to one of these companies or that would be interested in sponsoring the show in any way, and we use their cards exclusively, let us know. We would be interested. So, this one is actually a set of cards from a company called Love Lingual, which actually my sister, Savvy, shout out to Savvy, she gave us these at Christmas. And so we thought these would be fun to throw these into the deck. So this, in each deck, they have a grouping of different categories in there. And so the ones that I've peppered into this deck, there's some that are couples cards and some that say past and future. But in there, I've also seen there's intimacy, there's family and friends, things like that. And so, or just family. So there's a very wide spread of how, you can have this whole box, but you can choose depending on who you're using these cards with, what level of intimacy you want to go to with these people. And this is a past and future card that says, what change did you make in your life that you're the most proud of?
What change
Mm-hmm.
did I make that I'm the most proud of? Does marrying you count? I'm kidding.
If you want.
That's like the easy answer. No, I'm kidding. Okay. I guess it took me a minute to think of this, but this was like not an instant change or like even in a year. This has changed over my lifetime.
I mean,
but it's still a change.
It's not asking about an instant change.
Yeah.
It just says, what change did you make in your life that you're most proud of?
Yeah. I guess going from literally the most shy child ever. I mean, I hid behind siblings and my parents when people would come up to say hello to us because I was just like terrified to talk to people. So like, I don't know. I guess it's just part of just growing up and maturing, but I actually talk to people. I'm tempted to want to stay clammed up and shy and not look at people or talk to people because I'm like, I have that natural impulse to be super shy. But just over the course of my life, I've had to learn, like, I can't function well in life. There are people who are adults who still operate that way, and it kind of breaks my heart because I understand it. But being able to come out of that place more and more as I get older, I'm really proud of that, honestly, because, I mean, I was ridiculously shy. In the moments that I push myself to actually engage in conversation with someone I don't know or don't know well, I'm really proud of myself because my natural tendency really is to be like, I'm going to be, a fly on the wall. I want to stay in the background. I want to stay hidden, whatever. Anyway, so that was probably a long way to explain that, but I'm actually very proud of that. I am doing a podcast, okay? 5 years ago, I wouldn't have done this. So, yeah, I'm proud of that.
Oh, that's cool. And I'm proud
of you. A lot of growth in that area.
And I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
For continuing to push yourself.
Well, and you push me too, which I really appreciate. Sometimes I get annoyed at it.
I'm not sticking a boot in her rear. I'm gently.
You encourage.
Yes.
Yeah. What about you, babe?
I would say that the change that I made in life that I'm most proud of is actually starting to go to therapy.
Yeah.
because I spent a long time. For those that know, I'm an Enneagram 8, and I don't take that on as identity. It's just a tool to help me identify why I do some of what I do in my life.
Mhm.
And eights typically, uh, for us to show vulnerability is incredibly difficult.
Mhm.
And for the longest time, the only other time I'd been to any kind of counseling or therapy was during my first marriage, and my motivation to be with that counselor was for all the wrong reasons. I wasn't looking at anything related to myself. I thought I was trying to fix her, which is a
Mm.
horrible motivation to be in counseling. Um, and so I finally, uh, yeah, I started going to therapy for myself. I was encountered through some of the work that I did uh, with a book by Dr. John Deloney called Own Your Past, Change Your Future, that I was working on the audiobook production of that, where, y'all, I had to listen to this book like 5 times from, prepping all of the documentation for the book, for the recording purposes, listening to the recordings, or listening to it while we were recording, listening to each version of the edits and making tweaks along the way. And so I reached a point about, the third or fourth listen through where I was just encountered with the fact that I couldn't continue to, uh, you know, keep the closet door closed on all of the trauma and trash that I'd encountered in my life and that I'd experienced. And I finally started going to therapy.
Mm.
And it's provided me with the tools to better communicate with Amy, provided me with the tools to communicate to Amy, hey, there's this book on the shelf. Um, do you want to know about it? Do you want to talk about it? Do you not want to talk about it? And so all of these different things. But yeah, it's allowed me to feel a little more free, provide me tools to better understand myself. I was having a conversation with I literally had a conversation with Patrick yesterday about, well, I won't share what I was talking about, but was just wrestling through life and some mindset things that, that I was just trying to figure out if I had the right perspective on. And he just, helped continue to point me in a good direction and encourage me where I was on point and provide a different perspective if he thought that I was a little off on something.
Mhm.
Um, and it's been great to have. I know that I have my wife. I know I have you that I can talk to, and we can be vulnerable. I can be vulnerable with you, and you can encourage me, and we can have conversations. Um, and it's also helpful to have somebody in your life that isn't living with you every single day and has the perspective of every single thing in your life all the time, uh, to just give a third party perspective view on. Um,
Mhm.
and so, yeah, that I would say the thing I'm most proud of is actually starting to go to therapy and allowing myself to be vulnerable and live in a way that's more vulnerable and accountable.
Yeah. I love it.
So,
All right.
is that it?
That's it.
All right. Well, hey, everybody, thank you so much for coming to this week's episode of the Intentional Life podcast. Like I said at the beginning of the episode, please, if you have found these valuable, share an episode with somebody. We want to be able to let more people hear what it is that we're doing. We can be an encouragement to more people. We just want to continue to increase our audience in that way, whether that's, sharing the episode from YouTube or whatever podcast platform you're listening to, sharing, reels or shorts or whatever from social media platforms, and just continuing to put the word out there. If you would like, give us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening to. That's always helpful and encouraging as well. We love seeing the comments on YouTube whenever those do come in. And so thank you again for listening. This has been the Intentional Life podcast. Again, my name is AJ Selby.
I'm Amy Selby.
Thanks for listening. We'll see you in a couple weeks.